Right, let me just test which one's sugar. Not that one. Great. Hi everyone, I'm Andy from Alta, and today I'm going to teach you how to make our signature bread course, which is pizza, Ajo Blanco and basil. Okay, so we're going to make our bread course, which is pizza, Ajo Blanco and basil, and this is basically a new version, or a unique take on a bread course in restaurants, born out of being very bored of sourdough in restaurants. So this is hopefully a little bit more fun, a little bit more about sharing and making people smile and laugh at the beginning. So comprised of three elements, basically, is the dough, basically, that we're going to fry a bit like calzone style, so it's crispy and in shards, a bit like pizza. We're going to make an Ajo Blanco, which kind of serves as the dip. It's almost like that kind of like garlicky, almost cheesy mouth coating feel that we're looking for as well. We've got to make a powder, basically, that acts as the tomato ragu sauce thing, but in dry form. And finally, we're just going to deep fry a little bit of basil. Cool, so we can start by fermenting the dough, basically, which will take a little while. So first of all, we're going to weigh out some yeast. It's about 8 grams or so. So it's this dry active yeast. It works really fast, which is always helpful. And we need a little bit of water as well, which is, I think, 150 grams. This is just like hot out the tap water, no fancy business. Not really lukewarm, like pretty pumping hot from the tap. It's about 150 grams in there. And I basically set that aside in like a warm place. If you're in a kitchen with an extraction, maybe turn it off because it will kind of go crazy. And we're just going to set that aside until it kind of looks a bit like Guinness with a big foamy head on top. While we've done that, the next thing we can do is whiz our Ajo Blanco, which is basically the sauce. So I'm just going to get my ingredients together for this. I'm going to weigh it straight into a blender, basically, because we're going to whiz it nice and sharpish. So it's about 50 grams of almonds. These are blanched almonds, so they're really like soft and ready to go. And once they're whizzed up, they'll just kind of go to nothing real quickly. So about 50 grams of that. We've got 8 grams of confit garlic. So for anyone who doesn't know how to confit garlic, you just peel some garlic cloves, put them in some veg oil and just warm it really gently until they go kind of soft and mushy. Some extra virgin olive oil, it's about 15 grams, just going straight in again. Now some veg oil, about 25 grams. And Ajo Blanco basically it's an Andalusian soup, really, traditional to the area, and it's made with, it basically means white garlic, and it's essentially almonds and garlic in its makeup. They use like bread as well to kind of whiz it up and thicken it. We're going to just dilute it a little bit less, basically, and it's going to come out more like a dipping sauce. Just throwing in a bit of Maldon Salt, that kind of crumbly sea salt flakes kind of vibe. And now the secret ingredient, this is smoke powder. This is a little bit chefy. And what it's going to give us is that kind of wood-fired pizza kind of feel. And it's going to make you feel like it's just come out of the oven, even though it's come out of a fryer. So about 2 grams of that, and it's going to add like so much flavor. Sherry vinegar, so very traditional Spanish, and a little homage to the source material, which was always the Andalusian vibe of it being a soup. And finally, a little bit more water, help everything whiz along a little bit. So that's everything in there, and now we do the fun bit, which is just to whiz it all together, and we'll have our dip. And away we go. Right, so noisy pot over. It's a bit chefy, but I'm going to use a piping bag. And basically, this is to kind of, for the presentation of the dish, I want that kind of like little dot kind of shape. And I could do it nice and rustic with a spoon, but I'm going to try and make it look half decent for you guys. Plonk that in there like that, and just whack him in the piping bag. Give it one of them, and turn it around. And we've achieved a little carrot full of Ajo Blanco, which we can then sort of pipe directly onto the plate, and it'll look very pretty. The next thing we're going to do is just deep fry some basil leaves just here. I'm going to just pick a few off. I will just deep fry these real quick. Basically, the bubbling is all the kind of water in the leaf, the natural water in the leaf. Once that stops, I know that we've kind of extracted all the water, and what we're left with is very crispy, lovely leaf. Great, perfect. So I've basically left with some very kind of glassy looking basil, and I'm just going to set that on a J cloth, but paper towel would do basically. The only thing that is kind of done already is our tomato powder. So I said before, this is a kind of take on pizza. So we've got our dough, obviously, but the flavouring we all love from pizza is that kind of tomatoey, garlicky feel. So I can show you just straight onto almost onto the bench that it's kind of like, you can see it's a tomatoey powder that we recognise as sort of pizza vibes straight away. It's got Italian herbs in there, basil, dried tomato powder, black pepper, cayenne pepper, smoked powder again. But the crux of it is all the things that you would be cooking in that pan to get the tomato ragu, the onions, the garlic, tomatoes. It's all in there already. And this is just going to bring all the pizza vibes straight home. So if you were to replicate this at home, yeah, get yourself some dried tomato powder and just think, what would I put in a normal pizza ragu? And it's all of those things, basically. Right, so we're going to make the actual the pizza dough now that we will then roll out and we'll fry. So we'd set aside the yeast and the water, and now we've got the kind of foamy head. It looks like kind of like a pint of Guinness, that kind of foamy head on top. That's when we know the yeast is kind of activated and it's ready to go in flour and make it kind of expand. So we can start to weigh up our bread dough now, which is super simple. So I've got some bread flour from a supermarket. Other supermarkets are available. I've tried every posh bread flour from our suppliers possible, and none of them work as well as this cheap supermarket bread flour. So I'm going to use cheap supermarket bread flour. So it's about 250 grams, and then it's 7 grams of Maldon. In we go, and 7 of sugar. Don't worry, it's not going to kind of make it real sweet or anything. It's going to help kind of activate all the yeast and do all the fermentation, make everything rise really well as well. Now we're just going to whack in the kind of yeasty water. You can pour the whole thing in there. And you know it's all gone well when there's no kind of like grains of the active yeast lying in the bottom. It's just literally like foamy water, and it smells like a kind of beer cavern, whatever a beer cavern smells like. Right, get in there straight away. If you're making a big quantity of this, you could use like a mixer, KitchenAid, sort of stand mixer. But if you're making a small batch, which I very much am today, I'm just going to get in with the hands and go old school and pretend we are somewhere far away from society. And it's all starting to come together now. Get all the bits off the side of the bowl. Amazing. Right, now that's come together. You can sort of knead it. Now, if it was a big quantity, you could do the real funky, flippy thing, or you could do throw it up in the air, la-di-da pizza thing. We're only working with a small batch, so we are just going to kind of gradually fold it. I'll do it in slow motion, but we are like folding it back on itself and trapping a bit of air in there. Do that for a little while. It's also mixing it, so getting it mixing. I can feel dough changing in my hands from going to what it is at the moment. It's quite sticky, but what's going to happen is it's going to kind of dry and stretchy, and that's the gluten activating. It makes it all go stretchy and wonderful, and you can start to see that kind of tearing effect now, and that's how I know that the gluten is activating, and I'm watching and feeling the dough change in my hands, and it's becoming that kind of very smooth dough now. So I think we are kind of there. I can cover that with a tea towel or anything at all. Half an hour, certainly, maybe an hour. And what's going to happen at the time is the dough's going to rise, and we know that that's pretty much ready to go. So I'll set that aside now. Cool. So we've got our dough now, and it's fully fermented. It's fully done its thing. We've got a nice sort of stretchy dough to use. So we can start now kind of rolling that out, and really we're ready to plate the dish at this stage. The long period is just waiting for that thing to ferment. So I'm just going to dust the surface, pretend we're in a sort of trattoria somewhere in Italy, and kind of roll this thing out. So I could use a rolling pin. I might use a rolling pin. I'll use a rolling pin for this bit, but it's also nice to kind of use your hands and kind of enjoy the stretchiness, and I'll do that for the last bit especially. So I'm just going to roll this out. You know, very much evoking the spirit of a kind of pizzeria and a trattoria. It's very true to the source material. That's probably enough. I'm not going to do any twirlies because I can't. So I have my pizza cutter thing, and I'm just going to cut some nice kind of shards. They need to be shards because we are trying to remind people that this is pizza, and pizza is eaten in slices, triangular slices. So kind of about 6 or 7 nice kind of triangular shards. Great. Going to select the best ones. That's kind of good, that's kind of good, that's kind of good. Right, and in we go basically to the fryer. So I'm going to lay them out flat so they fry flat. I wouldn't want them to sort of curl up and not look like pizza anymore. So it's really important they kind of retain their pizza shards. So as they're frying, they're puffing up, and puffing up quite dramatically. and starting to look like kind of something really fun to kind of dip through. And they're also taking on a bit of colour, as they would in a pizza oven. If you don't have a deep fryer at home, obviously, I think you're probably right to not do that. But you could do this in a pan with very hot oil, obviously. But they are nearly there now, so I'm just going to reintroduce my little J-cloth thing that's got the basil on it as well. So I do want these to drain a little bit. I don't want them to kind of go straight on the plate oily, otherwise it will kind of pool on the plate and look a bit nasty. But they are nice and golden brown at this point, as you can see, or you're about to see as I pour them out. Yeah, they look good about there. So, shake off a little bit of the excess oil. And we're going to pour them out onto our J-cloth. And there are our pizza shards, which look very nice, obviously, but we're going to make them look even nicer. Now, while they are still fresh out the fryer and have a little bit of moisture, I'm just going to season them. So this is table salt. And then here is the secret bit. So this is the tomato ragu powder, what we talked about earlier. And this is kind of introducing that tomato-y vibe. So we're just going to coat them. And we're going to coat them on one side and the other, so that whichever way you eat them, they will taste like pizza. And now we're going to plate. Basically, we've got everything we need to plate. So we've got our Ajo Blanco that we made earlier. Just going to dot this on the plate. So next up, we're going to place our pizzas. And I just have to be a bit strategic about which ones I go with first, in order to achieve the magical height. All right, something like that maybe. Okay, so I'll spin that around so you can see. We've got pizza, and the final touch is just gonna scrunch on a little bit of that deep fried basil that we did earlier. Nice and rustic, show your workings. And we've got the three colors basically of the Italian flag as well, that red, that white, and that green. Hopefully, it's a bit more of a fun bread course. I hope you enjoy it.